Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Sedgemoor District Council's Licensing and Gambling Panel. I will now hand you over to our committee manager, Mr. Taylor.
This meeting is being held under the recent government regulations brought in to allow for remote meetings to take place and to allow for decisions to be made. Hopefully those present will hear the meeting. However, in the event of a technical failure, the chairman will adjourn the meeting and set a new time to reinstate the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available on the Council's YouTube channel in the next few days. All members of the panel should have their video on, but will remain muted until invited to speak. If you wish to attract the chairman's attention, please make use of the instant messaging function, although for guests we will accept an interruption. All members of the press and public will remain muted unless they have registered to speak, and the chairman will let them know when they can make their representations. The format of the meeting will be as per the agenda published. Over to you, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you very much. So we start from the agenda. Agenda item number 1, we have apologies for absence.
No apologies, Chairman.
Item number 2, urgent business.
None, Chairman.
If there is none. Number 3, are there any declarations of interest? I don't believe there are. Brilliant. Okay, item number 4, Ocean Adventurers. We're here today to consider an application for a new premises licence in respect of Ocean Adventures Limited, Unit 11, Cheddar Business Park, Webwell Road, Cheddar, following objections having been received. Before we crack on, I would like to just ask each councillor in turn and everyone else taking part in this meeting and this panel to introduce themselves and just confirm that they can see and hear me. So we'll start with me. I am Councillor Polly Costello. I am the chairman of the licensing committee, and I am a ward councillor for Wedmore and Mark. Next on to Councillor Glassford.
Thank you, Chairman. I am Councillor Alec Glassford, representing Fairfax Ward, and I can hear and see you.
Thank you. Councillor Pay.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I'm Julie Pay, and I'm Councillor for the Quantock Ward, and I can hear and see everything.
Fabulous, thank you. Mr. Osborne.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Nigel Osborne, legal advisor to the panel this afternoon, and I can confirm I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. Miss Webber.
Hi, Chairman. Emily Webber, legal apprentice for the council, and I can hear and see you.
Fabulous. Mr. Weldon.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Alan Weldon, Licensing and Fraud Manager for Sedgemoor District Council, and I can see and hear you.
Fabulous. Mr. Taylor.
Steve Taylor, Committee Manager. I can see and hear you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Filer, the applicant.
Yep, Tom Filer, Director at Ocean Adventurers, and I can see and hear you.
Lovely, thank you. Miss Cooper.
Nicola Cooper, Avon and Somerset Police Licensing Officer, on behalf of Inspector Pacina. I can see and hear you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Chung. Oh, she was there. Sandra, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry.
That's
afternoon, okay. Chairman.
Afternoon.
I can hear and see everything. Thank you.
Lovely. Mr. Harris.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Steve Harris, Managing Director of Majestic Designs UK Limited and Majestic Window Designs from Cheddar Business Park.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Pilgrim.
Hi, Mr. Pilgrim, local resident of Cheddar, and I can see and hear you.
Super. Thank you very much. Right, we'll now commence with this meeting. So, Mr. Weldon, would you like to please present your report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The matter before you today, as has been stated, is a consideration of a new premises licence in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003. By way of background, on the 21st of June this year, an application for the licence in respect of Ocean Adventurers Limited of Unit 11, Cheddar Business Park, Wedmore Road, Cheddar, was received from Mr. Thomas Filer. As you will see from the report, the application seeks authorisation to permit the retail sale of alcohol on the premises only and the provision of recorded music. Both activities, as described on the application, are requested daily from 0900 to 2000 hours. The premises itself is comprised of an entertainment centre for families, including children's indoor soft play and role play, along with an on-site cafe. You will find at Appendix A a redacted copy of the application, and plans of the ground and first floors are at Appendices B and C respectively, and we've included plans of the area to give members and those present an idea of the situation of the premises. Those are shown on Appendices D1 and D2. A number of objections to the application have been received within the permitted time frame. Collectively, the objections touch on all of the licensing objectives, with most referring to public safety and the protection of children from harm. With regards to those objections, first of all, from regulatory bodies subject to the consultation process, the Avon and Somerset Constabulary have made representations on the grounds of the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, and the protection of children from harm. There are 3 documents in support of the objection. The first is the formal notification of representation with Appendix E, a copy of a police licence and officer's report regarding the visit to a premises made on the 14th of July at Appendix F, and a copy of the applicant's sale of alcohol policy regarding the premises itself, which is Appendix G. Following on, Mrs. Sandra Chung has objected to the application on the grounds of the protection of children from harm. This has been done in her role as Environmental Health Officer within the Public Protection Unit of Sedgemoor District Council, and the wording you will see of the objection is attached as Appendix H. For your information, at point 3.4 of the report, the Cheddar Parish Council objection has now been withdrawn earlier this week, following a resolution of their issues with the applicant. So can I ask you please to disregard Appendix I that's contained at para 3.4 of the report. Objections have also been received from representatives of local businesses sharing a trading area in the vicinity of the premises itself. These include Mr. A. Jones and Mr. T. Symes of Automac Cheddar of Mendip Vale Trading Estate on the grounds of public safety and the protection of children from harm, which you will see in the form of 2 letters of Appendices J and K. Mr. W. Midgley, Director of A.W. Midgley and Sons of Cheddar Business Park, on the grounds of the protection of children from harm and attached as Appendix L, and Mr. S. Harris, Managing Director of Majestic Designs Limited of Cheddar Business Park, on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance, public safety and the protection of children from harm, shown in Appendix M. A representation has also been received from a resident of Cheddar, Mr. Pilgrim, on the grounds of public safety and the protection of children from harm, and you will find that objection attached as Appendix N. Just to remind the panel, really, the options for today in terms of a decision are, firstly, to grant the application as applied for. Secondly, to grant the application with attached conditions. Thirdly, to grant the application in part. Fourthly, to grant the application in part with attached conditions. Finally, to refuse the application. That concludes my report for today, unless, of course, there are any questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Mr. Weldon. I have a quick question straight away. Do we know why Cheddar PC have changed their statement?
We don't actually know. They withdrew it on the grounds that they'd come to a resolution with the applicant. So okay, well, I would refer that to the applicant, perhaps. Yeah.
I'll wait and ask him afterwards.
Thank you.
Panel members, anybody else involved? Any questions for Mr. Weldon?
No, I haven't got any questions at this stage.
No, it doesn't look like I've got anything in the conversation. No one? Okay, super. Well, we'll move on for now. And if Mr. Filer, would you like to present your application to the panel and everyone involved? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So thank you all for your time this afternoon. I think it's important here really just to go back a little bit, back to the beginning and take a little bit of a step back. So we started Ocean Adventurers in July 2019, some 13 months ago. Since this date, as a business, we've enjoyed significant highs, winning Startup Business of the Year 2020, alongside a number of other awards. But we've also had some of the worst lows, being one of the first businesses into lockdown and one of the last to come out. Indeed, we've been closed for over a third of our life as a new business, and we have no advised reopening date currently. We've also recently had to make the tough decision to let all of our staff go as we struggle to keep the business afloat in an impossible operating environment. COVID-19 has changed the way that we need to operate as a business. The soft play I opened with my wife last year is no more. It simply can't survive in the new world. To keep going, we have to adapt and diversify. We need to change the business model of the soft play, focusing relentlessly on customer experience to enable a higher income per head, and also to spread demand throughout the day, not just the peak lunch times. With lower numbers due to social distancing, we have to maximise all opportunities for secondary spend. We're focusing on two areas within this objective: retail and food and beverage. On the retail side, we partner with two key children's toy suppliers to provide toys at reasonable prices on exit. On the food and beverage side, we're looking to upgrade the previous cafe experience into more of a restaurant experience. Food is absolutely key to this objective, and we've already redesigned our menu to push the boundaries of our previous offering. But enabling adults to have a glass of wine or bottle of beer with a meal can also be a key part of enabling a restaurant experience. I note that the objections received have mainly been around the protection of children from harm licensing objective. It's therefore on this objective that I will focus the most. I think it's a little bit helpful to go back to basics here, if not only because it's helpful to me personally, as I have limited experience of the licensing regulations until relatively recently. The Licensing Act 2003 states in section 2.22, which is the first paragraph of the protection of children from harm section, it states the protection of children from harm includes the protection of children from moral, psychological and physical harm. This includes not only protecting children from the harms associated directly with alcohol consumption, but also wider harms such as exposure to strong language and sexual expletives, for example in the context of exposure to certain films or adult entertainment. Licensing authorities must also consider the need to protect children from sexual exploitation when undertaking licensing functions. Sedgemoor's licensing policy further states, the Council would judge the merits of each separate application before deciding whether to impose conditions limiting the access of children to certain premises, to individual premises. The following are examples of premises that will raise concern. 1, where there have been convictions for serving alcohol to minors or with a reputation for underage drinking. 2, with a known association with drug taking or dealing. 3, where there is a strong element of gambling on the premises, or where the entertainment of adult or sexual nature is provided. It therefore seems clear to me that this licensing objective is focused primarily on protecting children from the consumption of alcohol, and specifically the selling of alcohol to minors, and the effect of other adult entertainment that might take place on site. I hope that you'll see from our application and supporting documents that these risks are significantly lower than our premises than other venues, primarily because 1, we have a low volume of teenage adolescent customers. 2, we don't have on site any adult entertainment or gambling. We're proposing some of the strictest controls for the sale of alcohol in England. I'm aware that many people have found the amount of detail on the licence application initially lacking. And this is partly my fault, and I think partly a way that the application itself has been set up. However, I hope that you've all managed to access our full alcohol policy PDF as part of the documents for this meeting. In it, you will see the key controls for preventing adults in charge of a minor getting drunk are the following. A 2-drink limit policy monitored through our new software. Training our duty managers in advanced safeguarding to spot any signs of neglect. Training all customer-facing staff to spot the signs of intoxication and report to the duty manager if necessary. Only selling small bottles of wine, bottled beer and cider. No spirits will be sold. No promotions for alcohol, and the alcohol will be priced at restaurant prices. And only polycarbonate glasses will be used. We'll be moving into a 2-hour session model, which will limit the ability of adults to consume copious amounts of alcohol within that time frame. Alcohol will not be on public display. It will only be visible on the menu. I can give you examples of other indoor play operators that successfully sell alcohol. There are sites in York, Wembley, Oxford, Basildon, Stevenage, Cambridge, Grays, Ipswich, Braintree and Southampton, and this list is by no means exhaustive. I give you this precedent not to show you that you should accept the application simply because other areas in England have, but rather to inform you that I've consulted with all of these sites to ascertain how they sell alcohol safely and if they've experienced any issues as a result of their alcohol licence. Some have operated with their alcohol licence for over a decade, and the answer across the board is unanimously no. These centres have not experienced any major issues while serving alcohol. There's also precedent at other leisure venues locally, such as Weston Pier, Puxton Park, and other garden centres. Many of the garden centres have alcohol licences. The key for us is to sell alcohol safely. We don't want drunk parents as much as anyone. It just wouldn't work for our business and it has a potential to damage our brand. What we do have to do, as I mentioned at the start, is adapt and diversify our business to adjust to the post-COVID world so that the centre can be enjoyed by families over the years to come. I'm incredibly worried about the future survival of this business, but that doesn't mean that we have not considered and put in place some of the strictest controls in the country to sell alcohol safely. I think it's also important here to consider the Dcms guidance under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 as issued in March 2010. The Dcms guidance states in Section 2.43 that the Secretary of State intends the admission of children to premises holding a premises licence or club premises certificate should normally be freely allowed without restricting conditions, unless the 2003 Act itself imposes such a restriction or there are good reasons to restrict entry or to exclude children completely. Licensing authorities, the police and other authorised persons should focus on enforcing the law concerning the consumption of alcohol by minors. As I've already covered, the premises are naturally at lower risk because of the age categories that we have in our customer base. Furthermore, the application is in line with the founding principles outlined in Section 1.4 of the same guidance by DCMS. In particular, the legislation also supports a number of other key aims and purposes. These are vitally important and should be principal aims for everyone involved in licensing work. They include the introduction of better and more proportionate regulation to give businesses greater freedom and flexibility to meet customers' expectations, greater choice for consumers, including tourists, about where and when and how they spend their leisure time, and the encouragement of more family-friendly premises where younger children can be free to go with the family. This application fits well with the above 3 points, which are part of the wider 6 key objectives of the legislation. This application will provide greater flexibility and choice for families and tourists in the local area, whilst allowing their children to use the play facilities in a safe manner. Surely, this is better for society than a family deciding to take their children to the pub or restaurant with no play facilities because of a lack of other options. I hope that the above clarity on the controls that we're proposing as part of the licence will help to put your minds at ease regarding the safeguarding of children. I'm more than happy to answer any questions at this point that you may have about our application.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Feiler. That was very informative. I'll quickly kick off with questions and then go around and ask if anyone else. I had a couple here. What is the age restriction for children to play on the equipment?
12 years old.
12 years old, okay. And my other one was, how will you make sure that people don't have more than 2 drinks? How exactly were you going to monitor? I did look at your format, but I couldn't work out how it was going to be done.
Yes, so we've got a system called Fuse Metrics that has been specifically designed for the leisure industry. Basically, it requires that everybody coming into our premises has a lead visitor, and then underneath them they have the names of who's coming in with them, so be it a partner and children or other adults and children. And that also has the ability to track against their account and the table number the amount of alcohol that has been ordered. So we can track on the cafe and we can monitor the 2-drink policy.
Okay, that's very clever. Thank you. Right, I'll open this up. Anybody, have you got any questions for Mr. Filer?
Yeah, on the point that was just made reference the app to track the drinks, what's stopping somebody using 2 drinks from one party that's come in and 2 drinks from somebody else? And how do you monitor whether someone has had alcohol prior to entering the building?
So we're doing it on a table by table basis. Obviously, we still have our staff in and around the premises. So our staff are about clearing tables as quickly as possible and supervising certain elements of the play structure, not all of the play structure. And so they will be also keeping an eye out. As I said, we're going to train all of those staff to spot the signs where they can. We're also, I mean, I think the key point here is that if multiple groups that know each other are in our centre, they're likely to be on the same table. So by having tracking against the table, that helps with that objective. And remind me of the second question, sorry.
How can you be clear what alcohol has been consumed prior to entering the building? You're talking about 2 drinks administered in a very short period of time there, which is only 2 hours.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're putting forward procedures and controls to do as much as we possibly can to stop adults getting drunk and not being able to look after their children. There is obviously a limit to that. What we're doing is we're training our staff on spotting the signs of intoxication. So if somebody comes in and it's completely within our right to not sell alcohol to an individual, either because they smell of alcohol when they come in, or because we suspect their behaviour is erratic. However, what we've seen, and when we first opened Ocean Adventurers, this is one of our principles that we really wanted to push, was actually having more of a restaurant feel with alcohol. We decided against it because we didn't have enough experience, and we didn't want to go into this. We didn't want to go into having an alcohol license without having the proper experience first. What lockdown has enabled us to do is actually consult with a lot of other operators to see whether that is a significant issue for them, and they don't have a 2-drink policy in place across all of those sites that I mentioned, and it's not an issue for them in terms of adults getting drunk and not being able to supervise their children. I think you're on mute, Steve.
Yeah, Steve, you're on mute. Steve, you were on mute for your last bit.
I'm not sure he is because it isn't showing the mute icon.
Okay, we couldn't hear you. Lost you. Can you type it whilst you're doing that?
Hello?
Oh, there you're back. There you are.
Okay. On the 2-drink policy, obviously it's the parent's responsibility to supervise the child at all points in time when they're in there. Do they carry the drinks with them? Do they, if the child falls over, do they leave it on a table for another child to pick up? What do they do?
So the drinks initially are delivered to their table. It's table service, and so there's no risk there. And we will be asking parents to drink at the table. Parents aren't allowed on the structure. They are responsible for supervising their children. They're not allowed on the structure as per the our rules of play. And there will be staff members about if children do get into any difficulty on the structure. That's no different to how we operate currently.
Right. So the parent won't be allowed to go and supervise their child because they've ordered alcohol. Is that right?
No, parents need to supervise their children, and supervision can be done verbally. And in our experience, that works quite well. Where we get issues where parents potentially need to go onto the structure, they do so accompanied by staff. So in the instance of potentially, we have during busier times, we can have maybe 1-2 incidents a week where we have various protocols and procedures, and we activate our missing child protocol, which basically means all of our staff they swamp an area, and 9 times out of 10 they're in a very specific area, but we guide the parent then onto the structure. But yeah, normally the supervision is done verbally, and we've got really good lines of sight within the structure, so it can be done from your table.
Great. Thank you.
Sorry,
I've got a line of people coming up with questions already.
I just wanted to make a point on that, if possible.
Who is this?
When he said that,
Mr. Pilgrim.
Mark Pilgrim. Right. Because obviously I've entered the premises several times, and with my 3-year-old daughter, and she's had a thoroughly good time. However, I know myself and my partner included have been on the structure, and not once have we ever been told not to be on the structure. Nowhere did it say that we're not allowed on the structure. Is that something you brought in?
No.
You just said you're not allowed.
So at every entrance and exit point, it says that the parents are not allowed on the structure. In the rules of play that are distributed throughout the centre, it also states parents are not allowed on the structure. We do have we do have a flexible approach sometimes to that. If we're at capacity, no, we don't have a flexible approach to that. If we're not at capacity and a parent is literally just going on the structure to quickly rescue their child, and they're just going in, then that is something that we do allow. And by the time we get there, to be honest, normally they've come out. With alcohol, we obviously, if somebody's got alcohol on their table, we won't be allowing those parents to go into the structure, and we will be keeping an eye on that. So we will be a lot stricter around those.
Okay, I've got a queue of questions coming up. Firstly, Councillor Glassford.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Could I ask, what experience have you got in the licensing trade?
Relatively little up to this point. I can tell you I've read the Licensing Act and policies several times cover to cover, and I can tell you I also hold a personal license as well. In terms of experience, no, I have previously worked in licensed premises, but I haven't been in management of licensed premises.
And would you be training up your staff if this was granted?
Approach really with our centre. Yes, it's incredibly important for children to come in, let off steam. We've also designed the structure so that it encourages learning and development as much as possible throughout the structure. That's incredibly important. Healthy eating. We're partnering with lots of other organisations to resource that. So children are absolutely at the forefront of how we've designed that centre. But a key ingredient, and this is one of our 3 pillars, is the adult experience. So when you go into the centre, you'll note from your previous visits that the furniture doesn't look like children's furniture. It's adult furniture. It's dark brown. It's something you'd see potentially in a restaurant. You'll note that when we introduced right from the beginning mobile phone ordering, so you can get stuff delivered to your table, that's aimed at the parents. From the acoustic panelling that we put into the ceiling, again aimed at parents. And so there's no difference here. There's no to say that we should only, and I don't know if this is where the question was going and whether I've taken this off on a different tangent, but to say potentially that we exclusively set up for children and children alone is not how we've run the business and not how we intend to run the business.
Okay, does that answer the question?
No, that's everything really.
Lovely. Can I just say, whoever's not, if you're not speaking, can you make sure you are muted? Thank you very much. We've got a bit of feedback going on. Right, have we got any more questions for Mr. Filer at present?
Can I just please have one in relation to the capacity of the building?
Yes, go ahead.
We will all sympathise, and certainly as a business owner, I sympathise with the current situation with COVID-19 and the fact that the business has had to be closed. I've certainly experienced that myself. But when you're saying you've had a capacity of 530, and in light of your application for a license, that number is going to drop substantially. Is that part of your application that you will limit it then to 200 people?
No, so I mean the number of 530 is the technical building capacity under the fire regs. That won't change as a result of this. Although we are putting in place, and we're removing one of the fire exits out front, which means that our capacity then goes down to 400. That's a maximum. What we're saying is we don't want to get up to that level. We know that it's coming down by 130. We didn't previously get up to that level, and we were significantly under that level at all times. And as I'm sure you're aware, we monitored capacity of children through taking shoes at receptions. It's a very foolproof method. Actually, the new system does it a completely different way, which is going to yield a lot of efficiencies. As I said, it's going to be a lot of trial and error. We want to keep it at a level that's sustainable for us, sustainable to keep going as a business, but also that solves a lot of the issues that we've had with parking on the estate. I don't
mean the parking, I just mean from the actual consumption point of view and the amount of people within your building if alcohol is being served. Because even obviously at 400, if you've got 5 members of staff, that's 80 people each. They've got to be observing. So
no, so 5 members of staff is based on 50 children, so about 120 in total. Obviously, as we increase numbers, staff increase significantly. So based on the previous numbers, we had anywhere between about 14 and 18 staff on site during our busy weekend periods. Just to give you a flavour, it was about it was over double what the staff numbers that have been quoted so far. Still, we've probably got another person in the kitchen as well, not much above that. So staffing levels absolutely will increase. We've got to. We have certain ratios, and there are elements here that are company confidential, and there were elements that were shared with the licensing officer again that were company confidential that have been disclosed, and I've made those representations. But we're working with. We're trying to work as flexibly as possible here, but I've got to be honest, where we just don't know what level we'll get up to. As I said, it's my current expectation that we will get up to 50 to 60%. As I said, that's going to be a little bit by trial and error, just to see how we operate on a safe and on a good customer experience, and that's really what's driving this forward, And that's the thing that's going to mean that we don't let in the same numbers as before. Is that we really want to focus this time around on the customer experience.
Because hopefully, the one thing I think everyone in this meeting would hope is there will be a vaccination at some point in time, and COVID becomes a thing of the past, which is something that we can all just pray for, really. But if that was the case, then this reduction in number, if that increases and you have your capacity back to where it was previously, with alcohol involved, that's got to be incredibly hard to police, I would imagine.
Well, I'm already stating that we are going to be, we're guaranteed we're going to be 20% less in terms of the building capacity, and obviously that's a building capacity. We can't go one person over that, so obviously we're going to set a level below that. So I'm definitely sure that we're going to be at least 20% less. I expect somewhere to be between 40 to 50% less. As I said, at the moment, it's a bit trial and error on that point.
Yeah, so I know last summer you posted 22,000 people that had actually gone through your building in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's 400 a day anyway. So there's a lot of people there that obviously are going to need to be supervised. That's my concern.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget as well, we're going to 4 sessions. So we're going to 4 2-hour sessions. So the capacity, what we're trying to do here is spread the demand throughout the day. So what we expect is that more local residents will come after school or later in the day so they can have an evening meal with their family, and they can enjoy that evening meal safe in the knowledge that the children are in a secure environment that's also safe.
So in clarity, that your business would operate until 8 o'clock at night, but it won't just be your license, it will be open until 8 o'clock.
No. So there may be one-off events, such as exclusive hires, but again, numbers will be a lot lower on those exclusive hires. We tend to see somewhere between 25 to 30 on average parents at an exclusive hire party. Our standard hours of operation will be 9:30 till 6:30. That includes those 2-hour sessions.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely, great. Thank you very much. Right, Mr. Harris, can you just make sure you mute? Thank you. Finally, right, I think, is that it now for questions for Mr. Filer for the time being? I think it is. Fabulous. Okay, let's move on. We now have Miss Cooper. Would you like to present your objections? Thank you.
Yeah, I apologise if you can't see me. Chair, members of the panel, good afternoon. Firstly, may I send apologies, personal apologies from Inspector Facina, who is away on leave this week and regrettably unable to attend in person. He has asked that I represent him at this hearing today. We have submitted detailed representations which we hope fully outline our concerns around the granting of a licence to sell alcohol at this premises, which is solely for the entertainment of children. We don't expect that all parents would engage in consumption of alcohol while supervising their children, but it would only take 1 or 2 incidents of drunkenness to undermine the protection of children and others using the premises. In fact, we feel that the sale of alcohol would actually be detrimental to this business, and we have discussed this with the applicant. We have no objections to his application for recorded music. As you have all had the opportunity to read our report and Inspector Facina's summary of our concerns, I would just like to reiterate some of the main points. We do not support a premises licence that authorises alcohol for a business whose main purpose is to entertain very young children from newborn to 12 years old. Adults supervising children could be drinking and potentially get drunk. This undermines the protection of children. The location of the premises on a business park. Most parents would need to drive to get there, which is evident from the parking issues and photos presented. This undermines public safety and also crime if parents were to drink alcohol and then drive a vehicle with children on board. Consumption of alcohol affects a person's behaviour and incidents of disorder are increased. Judgment may be impaired. Staff primary responsibilities at this premises should be supervising and maintaining the safety of children and not managing and observing consumption of alcohol and a possible lack of attention or supervision by parents. Parents and customers visiting the premises would not have a choice on whether to expose their children to others consuming alcohol due to the open plan layout. The time slot for visits is now restricted to 2 hours and alcohol may be consumed over short periods of time. Alcoholic drinks may be left unattended for under 18s to consume, even if unintentionally or by mistake. In the event of emergency evacuation, parents may not be so alert if they have consumed alcohol. Even the 2-drink limit mentioned can impair a person's judgment and could push someone over a drink drive limit. No robust or foolproof measures have been put forward on the application form to protect children. We have visited the premises and discussed our concerns at length with the applicant, and our representations are detailed and clearly explain the business, layout, application, and also our concerns. The applicant has not said anything else today that we haven't already considered or discussed with him at length. Our representations have been very clearly thought through and fully considered, and our decision to object to this application was not taken lightly. We always look to support businesses, and especially in these current very difficult times, but unfortunately it is our view that the granting of this licence would not protect children and undermines the licensing objectives. There are no conditions that could allay our concerns. On behalf of the Chief Officer of Police, we ask that the panel give careful consideration to our detailed representations as outlined in our submissions and refuse the sale of alcohol at the premises. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cooper. Right, questions for Ms. Cooper? Anybody who'd like to kick off if they've got them? Okay, Mr. Filer, go ahead.
Sorry, I can't seem to find my thumbs up on the text. Apologies for that. I've got a number of questions. Obviously, the report's very detailed, and thank you for taking the time to go into such detail. You mentioned at the start that this is solely for our business is solely for the entertainment of children. Can you just provide a little more clarity on the use of the word solely?
Are you there?
Sorry, they're coming there to bring their children to play, have quality time with their children, watch their children playing, not for the restaurant experience, because they can't come in without a child.
So in terms of my representations I gave earlier, in terms of our two-pronged approach, you're not in acceptance of our running of the business.
Sorry, are you saying I'm not accepting the running of your business?
No, I'm just it's a business that I own and direct and direct the direction. I set the direction of the business, and under the D2 planning use that we have, I've got a little bit of flexibility under that to allow both parents and children to be on those premises. Indeed, if we wanted to have sessions where it was adults only, other sites do exactly the same thing, where there are adults only sessions and alcohol is provided. I know that there's a site close to, the closest site to us probably is Newport, but that does happen. So under those, on that basis, I'm just challenging the use of the word solely on your opening remarks.
Your alcohol policy has been submitted with my representations. It clearly says in there you are not allowed to come without a child. You have not told me that there's adults only sessions, and if there were, I have no knowledge of that, and I can't understand why adults would want to come there for an adults only session. But it does state that you can't go without a child on your alcohol policy. So that is what I've referred to.
Yeah, no, I was giving that more as an example, to be honest with you. It's not currently our intention to have adult only sessions, but I'll probably move on from this because I don't feel like we're getting anywhere. But the second point I've got is that you stated that most parents would need to drive. Can you give me details of your assessment of how you've calculated that most parents would need to drive?
Any assessment in our representations is based on the meeting I had with you, which was over 2 hours. Also speaking to the beat team and where it's located, driving to the premises, having a look at where it's located, speaking to you about how busy it gets at weekends, how many car parking spaces you've got. When it gets busy, they're parking out on the pavement. I believe Mr. Harris has submitted lots of photos of that, and with the figures that you've mentioned, it's not difficult to calculate that most people are driving to the premises. You've got 45 car parking spaces, and on a weekend when it's busy, you said that is full with people parking outside. So I have come to the conclusion that most people would drive to get there. It is on a business park.
So it's a judgment, more of a calculation. It's what we're saying. It's a judgment.
Yes, judgment. I apologise.
Because similarly with using my judgment on the same point there, we've got 45 cars in our car park and it's full. On a normal day, and I note, and Steve has made previous representations to me with those photos, and I've put back points to him that not all of those cars are our customers, and I mean, we note that there have been issues with other businesses on the estate, and I note that with Vardo making some redundancies, it's probably going to make the situation even better alongside our proposals. But under my calculation, if we assume, and again this is judgment, if we assume there's 45 spaces on site and we assume a similar number of car parking spaces on the industrial estate, let's round it up to 100, and we assume that each family comes together in one car, and we're saying that we've had a building capacity of 530, actually the calculation suggests that most people walk to the centre, not drive. And that's just based on the basis of pure judgment and the facts that are in front of us. I don't know the answer to it, but I can, equally, it's my judgment that a lot of people do walk to us.
I don't spend a lot of time in Cheddar, but I have taken the time to speak to the beat team and the PCSOs and the inspector that covers that area, and it is their judgment that most people would drive to get to your premises, and that is the information that I'm presenting today and on the report.
Okay, I think the lack of, I think the amount of time that the beat team spend on our site is probably an area of shared frustrations across the businesses in the estate. And you mentioned also about no choice for parents, about parents not being able to choose whether or not they can take a child to our setting. But we've also said that the first session of the day, actually we're not going to start serving alcohol until the lunchtime period. But the report makes no mention of the fact that the first session of the day will be alcohol free.
Okay.
Sorry, apologies. I think I have covered it. Well, I know that I've covered in my report that you have agreed to pull back the starting hour for alcohol to 11 o'clock. So that is covered there. There is a slot, 9 to 11, but people are going to assume, I think, that the premises don't sell alcohol. In fact, there's been comments on your own website where people are airing their frustrations that you've applied for a licence. So I think a lot of people will come just assuming that a child's play area will not serve alcohol. That's what I meant by the statement.
Well, yeah, I think that's an interesting point to raise in terms of the recent media attention. Actually, what we've seen is that there's an overwhelming majority in support of our alcohol licence through the representations that we've had, and just through the lack of engagement that the Post got on Somerset Live and through other media. And what we've actually seen is the people that are objecting to this application normally are those that we don't think come to our centre very often. But in terms of not knowing that they could come to our centre, and not know that we sell alcohol, again, there's been a large amount of media attention on it at the moment. But I just find it strange that parents, you're implying that parents don't have the choice, whereas actually overall the choice here is, and we can put this on our website, but the choice is that parents just don't need to come. If they don't feel comfortable with it and they don't want to come to the morning session, I think the procedures that we're putting in place actually will mean that alcohol won't be obvious or in your face. I actually think that most customers will enjoy having a responsible glass of wine with a meal. And then the other points on your application, that you refer to the fact that the 2-drink limit could impair judgment. Am I right to assume, reading between the lines there, that you believe essentially that that would affect parents' ability to look after their children?
Yes, I do.
And across, I mean, because obviously what we know with alcohol is that there different people, the metabolisms of different people work at different speeds, and we also know that we're proposing a 2-drink policy on bottled beer and small bottles of wine. And if we're looking at beer in particular, it's very likely that on the beer side of things, that actually when we look at the units and we look at the passing of time and the burning of alcohol, I'm not sure that we can apply that across the board. If we were proposing an unlimited drink policy with spirits and everything else, there might be more of a rationale there. I just don't necessarily agree with that. And then just finally, and I know I've spoken for a while now, but just finally, there's a point of correction on the final point on the inspector's report, which is Appendix E, on his third conclusion point, where he says staff working at the premises should be supervising the safety of children. it's implicit and very obvious within our rules of play and generally that we are not a creche, and therefore that we are not directly responsible for supervising the children. Of course, we've got staff around ensuring that overall the centre is safe, but parents are responsible for supervising their children. And so the point on our staff not being able to properly supervise the children, just factually, there's no requirement under the standards that we operate to, BSEM 1179, or indeed generally under health and safety regulations for us to have those staff actually monitoring the structure. We do because we take health and safety very, very seriously.
That is exactly what he means. The point's very clear. He thinks that by selling alcohol to the parents, it could impair their judgment, and they should be supervising their children. Regarding your point about the consumption of alcohol, it's exactly that, in that it can't be judged.
Yes, and I might just, I think there are clearly some differences of opinion here about 2 drinks and the ability to get drunk and the scales of getting drunk here. Obviously, we are proposing a 2-drink policy over the passage of 2 hours. And I note from our discussions on site that you seem to be of the opinion personally that it's unacceptable for parents to drink any alcohol. That was one of the representations that you made to me whilst on site. And indeed that you found it unacceptable for parents at home to drink any alcohol while supervising children. And when I clarified about drinking versus getting drunk, your point remained that it was drinking. So I just wonder, and hopefully you can answer this, whether or not any of your personal opinions here have spilt over into this report.
The report is not based on my personal opinions at all. It's been put together by the inspector, the beat team, other people I speak to. I'm an experienced licensing officer in this role for 8 years. My personal opinions are at no point considered. It's based on the licensing objectives, and protection of children from harm.
Thank you. I've got no further questions.
Lovely. Thank you. I have Councillor Glassford has a question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Sergeant Cooper. My query is, what is the difference between a pub out in the countryside with a large garden, play area for kids, where one of the adults have to drive there, where there's alcohol available? What is the difference between that and this application?
I think I have considered this, and I think in a pub, lots of times people will go there as a family to have a meal. Alcohol may not even be involved, and the play area is totally separate from the premises. The easiest way to describe it is that a play area at a pub, whereas this seems more to be a pub in a play area, because there's no self-contained area and it's open plan and there's very small children. Does that answer your question?
Well, some of the gardens at pubs are, you have to walk through the bars to get to them and that, so it doesn't really, I can't see the difference actually, but thanks for your answer anyway.
Okay, have we got any more questions for Ms. Cooper? I think Mr. Harris is speaking, but I can't hear him.
Yes, can I just add to a point that Sergeant Cooper made reference to the amount of people driving to the venue. Without exception, the majority of people there do drive. The pictures that you've seen that I've enclosed don't relate to the weekends. It's not a busy time between 2 and 3. That's not a Saturday or a Sunday. They're working day mornings. They're working day afternoons on numerous different days, and there are hundreds more pictures that other businesses have taken in the same way as those. we can see where they're going because they get out of the cars. I know the standard number that Tom quoted on his original planning was 2 children to one parent, and that was on the original application. And calculated by the amount of foot traffic that Tom's had through his business, will say the amount of cars that would have to get people there, unless the population of Cheddar is going there every day. Ocean Adventurers was one of the first businesses to close down with lockdown, and instantly the traffic on the industrial estate went. So I totally and utterly, as someone that actually knows the area and works here every day, would endorse what Sergeant Cooper is saying. So I think local knowledge sometimes is exceptionally valuable in that scenario. That's what I've got to say.
Thank you, but I don't actually think that was a question. I think it was more of an observation, but thank you. That's not really a question to the officer. Are there any other questions for Ms. Cooper? No, don't think so. Great. Okay, we'll crack on then. We've now got Mrs. Chung. Would you like to present your objections, please? Sandra, are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Right, okay. I've been Environmental Health Officer with Mr. Filer since day one, since he's opened the business. However, since I'm receiving the report, I've made objection under the Protection of Children from Harm. I've had 5 questions since day one. I've also corresponded with Mr. Filer with the questions that I had in mind, and he's given me quite a few answers as well. I apologise in advance if Mr. Filer has already mentioned parts of the details already to you, but I think it's important for me to mention it because it actually answers the questions that I have for him specifically from my point of view. One of the questions, the first question I asked was, like most indoor play businesses, the parents are responsible for the supervision of their own children. My concern was, with alcohol consumption, would that mean that the adult becomes a bit relaxed and end up maybe too relaxed to look after the child or the children? As I said, I'm not medically trained, but believe consumption of alcohol can cause muscle relaxation and anxiety-reducing effects, which could be interpreted as less vigilant towards the children playing activity. I also claim supervision of the children could suffer consequences under the influence of alcohol. Now, I put that to Mr. Filer, and Mr. Filer has responded with additional questions that I followed up after his initial response. Mr. Filer said that he has a 2-drink policy that he's already gone into detail, and he's allowed the 2-hour time limit slot. The 2-hour time limit slot is monitored by his this electronic system, the Fuse Metrics, it's called, and also it collects all the data from the people who orders or who's present at the time. He told me that also that due to the booking system, everybody will be leaving the building after a 2-hour session. I believe that is the case, isn't it, Mr. Filer? Yeah. So that was the question. The other question that I had was it necessary to provide alcohol from 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock? On the website, the Ocean Adventurers website, it states it opens from 9:30 to 6 o'clock. I did question, why would you need a license up to 8 o'clock? I have been informed that would it be possible for the license to be start from 11 alcohol to be served between 11 o'clock to 8 o'clock being more acceptable? The reason he wanted this was for potential exclusive hire and one-off events such as Halloween, hence a slightly later time, but normally this will either be 4:30 or 7 p.m. I'm not too sure here whether that means that people come in just for food, or does that involve playing on the equipment? I'm not sure about that. But Mr. Filer said the exclusive hire parties are much lower numbers and so much easy to control. The 2-hour drink limit still stands, even though it's a private hire session. Question number 3 was, the purpose of the venue is predominantly for children to visit to have fun, climbing and playing in the softball area. Babies under the age of 1 is also permitted to enter the premises. Children as from under 1 year old up to 12 years old is permitted into the venue. There's also a play area, a role play area upstairs on the first floor where the responsibility of the safety of the children is also under the adult that has brought the children to the venue. Therefore, it is imperative for the parent to be aware of the location of the child at all times, regardless whether it's on the ground floor or the top floor. Especially when the child goes from the ground floor to the first floor and vice versa. I had concerns whether the adult downstairs might lose sight of the child upstairs. Extra supervision is required on the first floor as there's a ledge which overlooks the ground floor. Supervision with alcohol consumption could be impaired. I've been informed there has been some changes made to the top floor. The upstairs role play area has been amended to avoid the issue of unsupervised rat run, which means that there was an opening, and please correct me, there is an opening at the top floor when I initially inspected, but now the top opening has been closed off, so children cannot climb from the bottom floor to the top floor and get off at the top floor. And then there will also be 1 member of staff constantly posted to this role play area under the new operating procedures. From that, I asked a further question. I said, predominantly, I understand from the conversation that we've had that the supervision of the children are still under the parents' supervision. I asked confirmation whether the climbing part has been closed off, and you have confirmed that. Obviously, since the business is closed down, I haven't had the opportunity to inspect that. So that's that. Question 4 was, how do you manage the number of visitors, as there's been previous concerns of how many numbers could come in and leave and all that. I believe that you have changed the system in place, the fuse metrics that you're going to be using, and people will be able to book onto the session. There'll be about 4 sessions a day, but in between those 4 sessions, there will be 30 minutes where everybody will be leaving the building after that 2-hour slot, and that 30 minutes will be used to clear up and tidy and everything that needs to be done for the next session to take place. And finally, I said, it's not safe for children to be in a car when leaving with adults that has consumed alcohol that is in control of a vehicle. You says that you have the 2-drink policy in place. You're going to put educational posters up to make people aware of drinking and driving. The duty manager has also been trained to level 2 advanced safeguarding training to spot any potential signs of harm to children. Any parents drunk whilst solely supervising a child, for example, if they consumed alcohol before arriving at the venue, will be refused the sale of alcohol. My concern was, what will happen if the adult with a child becomes intoxicated while at your premises? Because the question was already asked, if the person did come in, that had alcohol consumption and then continue, who looks all right and everything, but then had 2 further alcohol consumptions and they've become intoxicated, what would happen being in supervising a child? You have replied, all staff will be trained to spot the signs of intoxication. The duty manager will be alerted who is advanced safeguarding trained. The person in question will be refused the sale of further alcohol and offered a taxi number. A decision will be made as to the risk posed to the child, and if necessary, the safeguarding team or the police, if there is an immediate threat to the child, will be called. We will have all personal details stored on the system to pass on to the relevant authority. I mean, I must say Mr. Fowler has been very helpful in giving me the answers that I require. However, from a professional point of view, the applicant has provided the information, but I still feel, as a professional environmental health officer, serving of alcohol is not appropriate in this kind of establishment, which is predominantly a child's playing area venue. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chung. Are there any questions for Mrs. Chung?
Tom.
Thank you. And thank you for again working with me over the last couple of weeks to discuss some of the questions that you've put forward. Is it right? We've got to we seem to have got to a stage, and just summarising your last statement there, is it right to say that we've gone through all the detail and we've got as far as we can with that, but similar to Avon and Somerset Police, this now remains a more of a moral objection? Is that fair to summarise?
As I said, this as I replied into your email, I think it's this morning because I was a bit busy yesterday. I feel that I can go as far as this, and I will leave it to the panel to make the decision then based on the information that you've given to me and the questions I've asked.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else got any questions for Mrs. Chung? Doesn't look like it. So,
thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Mrs. Chung. Next, we have on the agenda Mr. Harris to present his objections. Please go ahead. You're still muted, Mr. Harris. Thank you.
There you go. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, my objection is on the grounds of public nuisance, public safety and protection of children from harm. My concerns are inside and outside of the venue. And I accept fully that this isn't a planning meeting, it's about licensing. But the photographs that I've submitted will give, I hope, some indication, and it is only a very small token indication, of what hazards and risks are there for children attending Ocean Adventurers. As I stated earlier on, the parking literally is everywhere around the estate, and it is relating to Ocean Adventurers. The industrial estate, and it is an industrial estate, it's not a high street, it's very much an industrial estate, has been designed with low fences, wide entrances. There's HGV vehicles coming on and off the industrial estate all day long. It's used by local driving instructors to give inexperienced drivers their first lessons, issues for the children for cycling proficiency. It isn't there a safe place for children then to walk from there with the traffic that's coming onto that estate, being totally unaware that there will be children running across the road. There have been so many near misses with the children through last year, and even worse through the winter on the dark nights when lorries are coming through. It's exceptionally dangerous to do. We have two premises. It's even dangerous for us to cross the road from one side to the other when people are literally parked on the junctions, blocking the entrances. We've had lorries that have been blocked in, can't come out. Mix alcohol with that and someone leaves there after consuming just 2 drinks in 2 hours, which I've seen the effect that that can have on many adults, and they haven't got their wits about them, and there is a learner driver who isn't skilled driving around the estate, or there is an Arctic lorry that doesn't expect to see it, or a child runs out from behind a car. I think you're looking for disaster. We already had an incredible problem with rubbish being left on the estate. Again, since Ocean Adventures has been closed, there are no more nappies, there are no more wipes. The actual estate itself has become clean again. The other businesses around have been able to move freely, and the people walking on the estate have been able to move safely. Children, to me, should be able to go to and from a venue safely. I know Tom says he's got 45 spaces. I think planning actually says it's 32. There's also an application that's gone in to open up a nursery now within the same scenario. So you'll have a nursery next to a license, literally in the same building as a licensed venue. which will increase again traffic and traffic coming in and traffic coming out when people have been walking out after having drinks. At some point, I think a risk assessment needs to be made on both the inside of Ocean Adventurers and for those children coming out. Mix alcohol into the mix as well, and I think it's a very, very dangerous thing. I speak on behalf of quite a lot of the other businesses on the estate. I've noticed that there's been some other letters put in from people. I wish any business every success, but I've tried in the past to speak to Tom about this. He isn't interested. It isn't his problem. But it is a problem when an accident happens. So on those grounds, I would like you to consider it very, very seriously. And as I say, the photographs you've seen are literally just the tip of the iceberg. We've had drivers come in here shaking, physically shaking, because a child has run out in front of their vehicle. We've had the actual industrial estate clogged up because no one can get in. And nothing is done about it. Bring alcohol into that mix as well and it becomes terribly, terribly dangerous. And at some point, commercial gain has to become a secondary factor with the safety of everybody involved, including, and most importantly, the protection of children. So that's where I come from.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris, for that. Has anybody got any questions for Mr. Harris? No, I don't think so. Okay. And then we go on to Mr. Pilgrim.
Sorry,
oh, yes.
I did put my thumb up. Sorry, I must not seen it.
Okay, sorry. Oh yeah, I've seen it. Sorry.
So I share a lot of your concerns with children, especially when the cars are double parked along the road. I think that's where we get really concerned personally. We've had meetings before. I know that we've tried to do a lot with the business park as much as we can. And as I said, 12 months ago, less than a month after opening, we contacted Somerset Highways to try and get some double yellow sign down. That's a side issue to this. But the important thing here is that your link between this and the danger posed to children whilst they're getting in their cars. So our assessment of this is, in the short term, we've got more than enough, way more than enough capacity within our car park. And then in the long term, we don't anticipate the same levels of cars on the estate, especially needing to double park on the road, and that's where we really get the issues in your photos. And actually, I know you're saying since lockdown this hasn't been as much of an issue, but also since lockdown, the other big contributors to this issue have also made a lot of their staff put them on furlough, and there's redundancies that are coming on that front as well. So again, side issue, but my point relating to the alcohol is that this will reduce the number, by changing the business model that we're going to, this will reduce the number of cars that we have on the estate.
Okay, lovely. Not exactly a question for Mr. Harris, so that was just filling in. Has anybody got any questions for Mr. Harris? No? Brilliant. Right, we're going to crack on then to Mr. Pilgrim to present his objections. Please, Mr. Pilgrim, go ahead.
Hi there. You get my main objections are for the safety and welfare of children with selling alcohol on a licensed premises. As I've put towards the end of my letter, which is enclosed as the appendix, I'd previously worked within the hospitality industry, and I personally see a difference between a pub background and a children's play centre. I also state that my daughter is 3 years old. I've been to the venue multiple times, mainly on my own, whilst my significant other is off doing something where she can relax on her own. What I have found there is a lot of people are sole parents or sole guardians of children, whether it be 1, 2, or sometimes even 3 children at a time. I drive to the venue myself, and I live in Cheddar. So I don't know where the whole most people in the local residency walk to the venue comes from, because I'm a local resident. Everybody that I know that I would meet there would drive to the venue. We wouldn't share cars, we would meet there. I know a lot of people from outside of the area, whether it be Weston-super-Mare or Burnham-on-Sea, that like to come to the venue because of what they offer currently, but they drive to the venue. The big thing that I have noticed whilst leaving the venue is the fact that the traffic has been terrible, and on several occasions I have almost knocked down a child myself. You know, it's not very nice to have someone step out in front of you when you're trying to come away from the centre itself, let alone if somebody was to have alcohol on board, which will slow your reflexes down. You can't control who reacts to alcohol at what speeds. You can't see that. 1 minute somebody can be fine, the next minute they can be drunk. It's a fact. I really think that accepting this license would be irresponsible for everybody, and I feel very passionately about that. From one, the background that I have, but two, the welfare of not only my 3-year-old daughter, but also the welfare of other children within the local area. All it will take is one person to have that extra one beer that they're not actually allowed because it's been monitored to be 2, but somehow have managed that extra one, and their reaction speed will slow. As soon as their reaction speed slows and that child steps out in the roads, there's an accident waiting to happen, if not a fatality. And I'm very, very, like I said, passionate about drink driving as one as a whole. It should never be even considered or thought of, let alone in a children's play area.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Have we got any questions for Mr. Pilgrim? Oh, I've got Tom. Is it a question, Tom?
I've got 2 questions actually, and they're both questions.
Lovely. Go ahead.
So I fully appreciate that alcohol is a very emotive topic and divides people. But just firstly, for the purposes of full disclosure, can you just clarify your current employer and job title?
Yeah, of course I can. I actually work down at Majestic Designs in Cheddar.
Yeah,
but I don't.
By Steve, just for the purposes of full disclosure on here. And yeah. My second more substantive question really is, do you accept that you mentioned about the fact that you live locally and you choose to drive to the centre? Yep. Do you accept the fact that if you plan to go there and have a few drinks or have a drink with a meal, that you might choose not to drive and instead you would walk, so you have the ability to walk if you do plan to consume alcohol on site?
I'll be honest, Tom, as a child's play area, I wouldn't go there to have a meal or to have a drink. That is for my child to go and enjoy themselves. That in itself gives me enough time to relax. Them going to enjoy themselves at their own soft play centre gives me that time to sit down, have a tea, have a coffee, have a can of Coke, whatever it might be, to run around with their friends, whereby, yes, I need to be there and I need to be aware of what she's doing. But at the same point, I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to have a beer whilst my daughter's playing.
Lovely. Are there any other questions for Mr. Pilgrim? Anybody? I can't see any. No. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your input in this panel. Just a little bit of a debate or questions. Anybody got any other questions they want to raise before we have to sum up? No, I don't think we do. Right, okay. So we're going to sum up now. And is there anything else, Ms. Cooper, you'd like to say?
Just to sum up, Chair, members of the panel, thank you. We have further outlined our concerns today, and you have read and considered our detailed report and heard further concerns from local businesses, other partners and members of the public. Unfortunately, the applicant has been unable to put forward anything further that could allay our concerns today. And once again, we ask that on behalf of the Chief Officer of Police, that the application for the sale of alcohol is refused. We have every confidence that the panel will make the right decision based on the representations put forward today. That completes our submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Mrs. Chung. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry about that. No, thank you for everybody's input, but the information I've relayed is down to the panel to make the decision now. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Mrs. Chung. Mr. Harris? I can't hear you either.
The only thing I would like to say is I don't see it will add anything positive to a child's experience at the play centre, just possibly exposure to something that's detrimental. And I think I've said everything else.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Mr. Pilgrim?
No, I have nothing further to say. I just hope that common sense prevails in the situation that we've got going on at the moment.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Filer.
Thank you. So today I've set out a legitimate reason for applying for an alcohol licence, one that is vital for the survival of our business, but equally one that complies with all aspects of licensing regulations and policy. Others have sought to oppose the sheer idea of a soft play selling alcohol safely, but in their objections they have struggled to back up their cases with facts and a legal basis. If the legislation and local policy intended for such premises to be restricted from selling alcohol, it is reasonable to assume, in my opinion, that it would have been explicitly included in such wording. Indeed, petrol stations and service stations are subject to such specificity in the legislation. The opposers suggest that exposure to seeing the consumption of alcohol is bad for children. I submit, and I'm backed up here by the guidance around the legislation, that exposure to responsible drinking can have a positive influence on children. Seeing people enjoy alcohol responsibly makes them less likely to abuse alcohol later in life. There have also been submissions that because the primary, but not the only, purpose of our setting is for the entertainment of children, that alcohol shouldn't be allowed. I'm putting forward the case that allowing alcohol in such a venue as ours has a societal benefit, in that it allows parents to have a meal and a glass of wine whilst a child can play in a secure environment. The alternative would be taking a child to a pub or restaurant where the primary reason for visiting such a venue can be for adults to get drunk. These settings could expose children to foul language and sexual expletives that they normally don't have our standard of play facilities, which benefit both the mental and physical health of a child. We've set out some of the most comprehensive controls in England to enable us to sell alcohol safely. How many other venues have properly enforceable to-drink policies and staff trained in advanced safeguarding on site? I suspect relatively few. The purpose of our alcohol application being considered here today is to allow adults to enjoy and to responsibly consume alcohol, normally along with a meal. There is significant precedent across England at similar venues to ours and locally within other leisure venues. I hope the committee, the panel has seen how we've tried to work proactively and constructively in all aspects of the licensing application. We were pleased to see the efforts of some of our work pay off yesterday, as I mentioned, with the Parish Council, as they unanimously withdrew their objection after hearing the measures we are proposing to put in place. On this panel was Councillor Paul Finneran, who also sits as the local district councillor. I'm new to this, as I said at the outset, but there's nothing I can find in the Licensing Act 2003, the DCMS guidance on the same act issued in 2010, or Sedgemoor's Statement of Licensing Policy 2019 to 2024 that prohibits our venue from selling alcohol. Instead, what I do find is the explicit approval of more family-friendly venues and a more diverse range of leisure venues selling alcohol. I'm sure that the panel today will stay focused on the legislation as well as fact and don't stray too far into personal bias, as I believe some of the objections today have done. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Filer. Are there any final questions from the panel or the legal officers? No?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Mr. Filer one further thing, if that's okay. Having heard what you've heard today, Mr. Filer, are there any other conditions or concessions you feel you could make or would wish to make to try and allay some of the concerns of the objectors?
Well, I think that's so. I'll go back a stage before answering that question, if I may, because in coming up with a lot of those procedures and controls, what we've actually done is already consulted fully across the board. I think the issue that we've got today is that there is a moral objection to an indoor play centre having an alcohol licence. I think that's clear in Avon and Somerset's statements and representations they've made. It seems to be clear that the environmental health officer has the same opinion, and indeed the representations from the local business. So in response to putting in place controls against a moral objection, I think is a near impossible task. And indeed, it's actually a statement within Avon and Somerset's representation that they don't believe any further controls can be put in place. So I think we've got to a stage where we've put in place all the controls that we can. As I say, the most, or some of the most comprehensive in England, I believe, from what I've seen of other licensing policies. I don't think we can overcome the moral objection.
Thank you.
Okay. Nobody else? Okay. Well, at this moment, the panel are going to retire to our special room with the legal officers and the committee manager, and we will make our decision, and we'll be back to you all as soon as possible. So if you'd like to go make a cup of tea, we will be back as soon as we can. Thank you very much. Are we good to go?
Yes, Chairman.
Lovely. Everyone can see and hear me? Great. Okay.
Yep.
The Licensing and Gambling Panel of the 7th of August 2020, our decision notice. The Licensing and Gambling Panel has been asked to consider an application for a new premises licence for the premises known as Ocean Adventurers Limited, Unit 11, Cheddar Business Park, Wedmore Road, Cheddar, Somerset, following objections from local businesses, residents, Sedgemoor District Council, Public Protection Unit and Avon and Somerset Police. An objection from Cheddar Parish Council was withdrawn. The panel has considered all of the evidence presented by the applicant and objectors, both in person and in writing. The panel's decision was made in accordance with the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy, the Secretary of State's guidance and current case law. The application as submitted was for 2 licensable activities: the sale and supply of alcohol between 1100 hours and 2000 hours, and the provision of recorded music between the hours of 0900 hours and 2000 hours, 7 days a week. Whilst all the objectors took issue with the sale and supply of alcohol, none objected to the provision of recorded music. The panel's decision is this. Having considered all the evidence both in person and in writing, it is the decision of the panel that Ocean Adventurers Limited be granted a premises licence for Unit 11, Cheddar Business Park, Wedmore, Cheddar, Somerset, for the following licensable activity: the provision of recorded music between the hours of 0900 and 2000 hours, 7 days a week. The sale and supply of alcohol is refused. The panel was not satisfied from the evidence considered today that the application adequately promotes the licensing objectives for the sale and supply of alcohol, nor that the imposition of condition could address those concerns, and therefore the application for the sale and supply of alcohol is refused. A full decision notice will be published within 5 working days. I'll draw this meeting to an end. I'd like to thank you all for attending, and I wish you all a happy weekend. Thank you very much indeed.